Hi everyone, welcome to this case study on Alegre Bar Dining. If you've been here for a while, back when I first started We Who Design and started posting to Instagram, I did ask who would like to see a walkthrough of what it is or what went into the detailed drawings for this particular project. So this is the full documentation set for Alegre, which if you know a little bit about the project itself, we've seen some things on here, even checked out my studio work. It's a very transportive, tropical feeling venue inspired by Tulum. You really feel like you're being taken to another place for that period of time while you're in that venue having what is a very, very delicious meal. So if you're Sydney based or you ever come to Sydney, make sure you put it on your list of places to visit. But let me get straight into it. Let me walk you through exactly what it is that I deliver, exactly what I mean when I'm talking about detailed documentation. So this is the cover page. I always put a cover page on my set of drawings. Helps obviously set the tone for what it is we're looking at. We're looking at shops 13 and 14 King Street Wharf. Its address, of course. Then here we've got what the issue is and the date that it was issued. So these are really important too, because every time you add drawings or make changes to a drawing, you change the revision, and it's a way for people to all know that you're looking at the latest set, or if someone's looking at something different, when you're talking remotely or even on site, which drawing revision are you looking at? Like, that's really quite important. And then we've also got a little list of what's actually included in the drawing package. So we've got the drawings itself, which is this PDF, so plans, elevations, and details. Then I've got all my schedules, which I issue as separate PDFs to this main one. So skipping right through, we've got a site and location plan. This is something often asked for by landlords, by private certifiers when you're going through getting your CDC, also by council if you're going through them to get a DA. It just obviously, like we're seeing here, it shows where the site is located, which building in that particular area it is, and sometimes as well which tenancy it is within that building. But here it is, the existing plan. And what this one is actually showing is an overlay of the existing versus the new structure. So this cyan line work through here is all of the new structure the builders wanted to see, sort of a comparison of what was what, in order that we could try and assess a bit better around the services, particularly core holes. Core holes can be a really big thing, which is core holes are where you run all your plumbing, your drainage through to get rid of your wastewater, black water, grey water, all of that sort of thing. Being a tenancy that sits above another one, there were a lot of restrictions with this space about where we could put new core holes. So we did a lot of work around how we could reuse existing ones for the new layout. When we took over the site, it was 80% defit. The bathrooms, I think from memory, were still there, but like the kitchens had been completely defit. This big sort of teppanyaki bar over here had been defit. It was mostly an empty space, so we could see a lot of what we were working with as an empty shell. And then once we got started inside, our builders came in and took out the rest. So the existing plan is important because it shows what was there before. It can be very helpful with services, all that sort of thing. And then, of course, we move into our proposed plan. So big space, 650, 680 odd square meter restaurant. We have our main entry coming in over the side here, which leads into the private dining room as well, and bathrooms down a long corridor. Male bathrooms, they ended up being female bathrooms over on this side, leading into a lounge. So it leads you through this sort of experience of the space. So through a lounge area where we're greeted with the bar, some banquet seating, creating this really nice sort of bar vibe. Out onto the balcony if you're seated out there, otherwise coming straight on through. We've got a DJ area and a group dining space, more tables, more creating interest using banquettes, loose tables and chairs, and then smaller sort of bench seating as well to create these little intimate areas that give the operators the flexibility. So you could have, couples of 2, tables of 4 here, or you could give half of that over to a larger group of like 10. You could take the whole lot for a group of 20. It's really key in hospitality, retail design of food and beverage venues that you give flexibility like that, because You never know what kind of group sizes you're going to get on any given night. Yes, you get advanced bookings and that allows you to plan where to put people, but if you don't have the flexibility in seating, then you can't accommodate for those different size groups of people. Coming through the restaurant, then we have the kitchen over on this side. And what it doesn't show on the plan here, because it was something we came up against once we sort of got working into things on site, was that we actually have a raised floor in the kitchen here. So there's some stairs that are located at this point and this point as well. So as we could run drainage points from here, run them back to a line of core holes that was happening, sort of back in this area. So there's a lot that goes into these retail projects, food and beverage projects. It's not just all your pretty picture finishes. It's working out your operational layout. When I say that, what I mean is, where your bathrooms sit, how people get to those, how you hide them away far enough so as they're not, in the middle of a venue, or people aren't sitting near where you're opening bathroom doors, where your private dining room is, how your bar operates, where all the equipment is. Same with the kitchen and the access through to wash-up areas. You don't want staff running all the way to one end of the restaurant for a wash-up, only to have to go to the other end for the kitchen. And then same with the provision back of clean plates and things. You can't be running plates necessarily across the length of a restaurant. So we've got our pass, cold food, the ceviche over here. You've got the taco pass, and then there's a main pass for other plates in the middle here as well. And there's a dessert station encapsulated in all this as well. So, a lot of things go into how all these venues work. So coming through the rest of this floor plan, you can see we come down the side here. We've got sort of like this beautiful corridor kind of seating down here, which again is great for groups, but we do have access through to what is actually the female bathrooms in the end. And we've got a wheelchair and wheelchair access, because each entry has stairs. So we have to, here in Australia, make sure we're allowing for wheelchair access, which could be something retrofitted to the stairs, but there is a lift here that comes up from Lime Street. So we need to make sure that we were keeping that open in case, for those instances in which someone in a wheelchair is coming to the restaurant. What I like to do with these, you can see I've got some reference markers here, although the heads look like they've been cut off for some reason, so you don't actually know which page to go to see which sections they are. But also, this plan really for me is one that you go through and you list and you note what everything is. If it's just line work, you kind of look at things and people will go, oh, well, like, what is that? What's that hatch mean? So I've got a note here that says feature wall with a freeform stone cladding. The wall is floor to ceiling or to 2600 with feature cacti planting. So that's no. So you kind of start to get an idea of what these things look like. Similarly with the bar, the new bar with a high front counter at about 1100, stainless steel work surfaces, and a paint and tile finish to the front. So all of these sorts of notes add up to really explain what's going on here. What are these little yellow things? Well, planters on custom bases with casters. We're planting them with palms, lush planting to give, that sort of more tropical, as though you're away on holidays in Mexico, in Tulum, having a great time. Same down this side, feature booth seating with overhead arch and feature lighting. It's starting to create the picture in people's mind, giving them something, right, okay, so this is what that looks like. Because plans can only tell you so much. Let's move through this set a bit quicker now. We've got our, what I call a new construction plan. Other people also call it a set out plan. This is where you show everything that is being sort of built as structure to the space. So new walls, nib walls, plinths for equipment if we're doing plinths. Or, you've got all your bathroom partition walls. And I've also got the timber structure on here that we're putting in, which is more of a feature, but it's really like sort of integral to the structure of the space. So I've included that on this plan as well. Most importantly on this plan is the set out dimensions. So I've got a lot of different indicative set out points on here that I've noted where I'm taking measurements from. So, the interface of the entry wall, that sort of thing. It guides the builders to be able to set this out properly and work out around any, see where it's hitting anything else, anything that might come up as a problem. This is the set out for all your different sizes. And I've got a legend here as well that shows what each of the different hatches and walls are. And yes, it does look quite small, but the beauty of it is, and working with mostly electronically now, most of the sites I go to now, they will have a paper printout, but they've also got iPads and computers as well looking at this stuff. So you can kind of get away with doing, this is quite This is what 1 to 150 this plan, so that's about the maximum or the smallest I would put a plan on a page to try and add detail to it. But you know, we're lucky these days that I can zoom in and I can get that extra detail of what's going on in here, you know, where's lining up what the actual hatch is. Moving right on through, we've got an overlay for demolition here. So just looking at what's sort of overlaying where, so the guys can kind of see what to expect through that. And then I've got flooring plan, just showing where all the flooring finishes are. I didn't dimension this because the new construction plan is quite well dimensioned, and I think it's really clear where all of these sort of join lines therefore are happening. We've got a reflected ceiling plan. Because of how busy or how complicated, how big this project is, I left the lighting to a separate plan because it would look way too busy on here to kind of understand what's going on. So this is purely talking about what all the ceiling finishes are, looking at all of that detail. We've got multiple different ceilings going on. We've got the set plasterboard in one color, we've got the set plasterboard here in another color, and then we've got the kitchen ceilings as well. As an overlay or a different area to that, we've got some feature ceilings, the sticks above the timber structures we've put in, and then the balcony is a timber ceiling feature design as well. So that's all notated on here. These red boxes are where we're indicating we need some extra structure in the ceiling to put swings in. That's become something that Alegre is actually really famous for. Then we move into our lighting plan. So you can see the sheer amount of lighting that can and often does go into restaurants like this. We've got our general lights here. So I've just split them. I've gone red for general lights, so it's really clear to see where those lights are. Obviously for tasking areas like your bar, your back of house, your kitchen, but also in areas where the cleaners are going to come through and do some cleaning. I've got some spotlights out on here, also integrated into the timber screens, just to make sure that there is that opportunity to splash more light into the space when there's cleaning, or when, you know, if it's just too dark with the ambient light, you can turn on these other lights to just lift that brightness a little bit. We have got as well, we've got up lights within planter boxes and things that are all noted here. So really complicated, well, really detailed lighting plan. Wall lights going on, and then in purple is when all our feature lights are, including our signage. So we've got signage indicated, you know, Alegre, it's a backlit. We've got feature wall lights in all the bathrooms, pendants over different seating areas, pendants in here in the lounge area. So just going into all of that detail. And then of course we've got lines. So I've got red lines indicating where LED lights are going. Now moving through into our finishes plan. So again, looking at in obviously 2D form only. And that's one thing about plans. They are not the be all and end all of your documentation, because they're only giving information about where things are going, not any sort of 3D information necessarily about how high wall lights are going to be, how low pendants are going to hang, all of that sort of thing. So they all do work together as a plan set, but then we get into the details, the elevations and the other details that just give those extra layers to make sure that your vision is going to be executed the way you want it. Finishes plan, going through marking out what all of the surface finishes are for the space. I often do like one tag to a column and do all sides rather than having 4 different tags, which makes the drawing, at least to me, look too busy. So you can have a look. And this legend, of course, relates straight back to the finishes schedule. We've got our overall equipment plan here as well, so where every piece of equipment's going, and then moving through into moving through into services plans. So services plans are hydraulic plans and electrical plans. And you can see we've got an overlay happening here, different hatches and things that are indicating what's actually going on downstairs and where we may be able to add new core holes. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can actually see it more clearly that we've got 3 areas where we might be able to core hole, and each different hatch is a different color because it's actually a different zone. So we've got a bulkhead zone here where we might be downstairs, we might be able to put core holes, back of house area, and then a brew house area. The rest of this space here, we are unable to put core holes in. There was a gantry at this point, which we might, not really great for core holing. So what we've done, therefore, you can see back to all of these lime green symbols here, is where we could get core holes in. So the floor of the kitchen was raised so as we could run the drainage back, and you can see it in these lime green lines where all this drainage was hopefully able to be and was run to. So we've got sinks here, and the water would run back there, the floor waste as well, run it back to different and this sink through here. So we tried to keep as much off the front drainage wise as we could, but there was some inevitables, so that's how we worked around all of those points. The rest of them we were able to put new core holes in, I think, for the bathrooms, or reuse sort of existing ones, and that worked out really well. Actually, similarly, there's another one here with the bar. So with the sinks, ran back to core holes over on this part of the restaurant. So, you know, there's lots of different layers of things, and not every designer gets into all of that, but it is part of what I do and what I'm teaching or bringing to help you guys with, because it can be really confusing. So this is a core hole set out plan. This is where we wanted to put all of our new core holes in. So we went ahead and did that. This is the overlay, how it works sort of downstairs. This is the fit out of the sports bar, very large sort of pub-like sports bar downstairs, and just keeping all those core holes to areas where we were able to put them through. Electrical plans don't have any issues with core holes when it comes to electrical. Lots of different options with how to run electrical to different areas. Through the ceiling is a very easy, awesome option. You can also chase in some instances into the floor. There's different rules and regulations around that though. So if you've got walls to run power down to things, and ceiling cavities generally will be where you'll run power from your main distribution boards. But simply just using symbols to identify what item needs power, and I do add the notes to really make it clear that, you know, this is a spare power point, this is a power point that sits under the bench for fridges, this is a spare power point that sits above the bench for any sort of plug-in items. All those sorts of considerations, as well as for the planter boxes. I've got make sure that you're allowing and running power for the lighting going into these planter boxes, because that would need to be done early on, so as to make sure that you're able to provide power either chased or under the floor layer, which is, you know, it's silly to lay your floor then rip it up again just to run power. So the hierarchy and the different scheduling of different things. Furniture plans, all of our furniture items, different little colored codes for where each one goes, makes it really nice and really clear, at least as a design intent. This all gets moved around, no doubt. Sometimes once you get on site, they're putting different things in different places, but you know, that's how we work through what goes where. Moving into sections, with these overall sections, I do add some notation. I do them at a scale that I can get the drawing on the page in its full entirety to start showing people what this space looks like. And on this one, yeah, I did include a lot of the reference images that had prompted the design elements in the space. So I keep some notations on there to describe what things are. I started showing with the red lines where LED fixtures are going in, but what I don't do with these is to put dimensions on it. It's too small a drawing, it's too confusing, and horizontal dimensions you've got on the new construction plan. Vertical dimensions will come in the detailed drawings. So I'll just flip through these. Very simple line work elevations, and because I did this in AutoCAD, no 3Ds with this one, because that's not the way in which I work in AutoCAD. What we might actually do at this point is to pop over and have a look at the CAD files. So I'll just open up the plan file here, which I think is going to download from my cloud as it opens, and I'm going to do the overall elevations as well so we can take a look at those. Here it comes, it's loading up. I do keep AutoCAD as part of my toolset. I use pretty much exclusively SketchUp with LayOut now to design and document, but for projects just like this one that are large, especially in those early stages, you will work in AutoCAD because it's quicker to just work through multiple different options for layouts in the early stages. Once you put things into 3D, any of you that do work in 3D know that it's just that much more time consuming to amend 3D models for things than it is to just do it in 2D. I don't know why this is taking so long to open. Let's pop back over here and have a quick look through these whilst that opens. So we've got, starting to look at what that feature fireplace is. Remember the note we made about the walls that don't come the whole way to the ceiling, but they've got the freeform stone on it. They don't come the whole way to the ceiling because this entry frame structure pops straight over the top. So really interesting little details like that just add that extra depth of detail to the space. All of the reference imagery for what this timber structure looks like, what these swings are. Just, trying to make that visual really strong for people. And then I broke it down into 1 to 50 sized elevations as well, so I could then get more of that detail. I'm starting to put, RL levels to show what heights things are at. I've got finishes codes coming in onto these drawings and some of the more overall dimensions as well, so you can see that next level of detail starting to come through into what all of these things are. Still very layered, still showing a lot of information. Here we've got furniture showing over the top of the other bits and pieces, so these still aren't enough to fully explain and fully control the execution of this design to the guys on site to make sure that they're going to do it in the way in which we want it to be done. And then we arrive in the first set of what I call detailed areas. So if you've done my course, if you've heard me or seen any of my Instagram posts where I talk about detailed areas, bar, kitchen, bathrooms, I call them detailed areas, and I'll have a set of drawings where we go into a lot of more detail, zoomed in, a lot more detail about all of these things. So what I might come back and do is another video where we go through this in more detail, but as an overall case study, because I don't want to drag this out too long, I think I've already been yapping on quite a bit, but you can see we've got equipment codes, finishes codes, hatches for surface finishes, notations going on. We've got the different wall types happening in here. We've got reference markers and dimensions, and what all those reference markers point to is all of these detailed elevations. We go into even more information, more notes, more detail, more sizing of everything. These are sort of more overall ones. We're looking at all the elevations of the space, the sections through the bar, and then we get into then detail of that back bar again. So it is this level, this hierarchy, starting at 1 to 50, whittling it down to 1 to 20 to really look at, right, well, what's the width of that post? How does this post work? It's not fully solid, it's structured with timber around it, all of these sorts of things. How are you going to build it? Why is it hollow? It allows you to run power down to the light that we're going to put in it. So all of these sorts of things, how we're going to put a plinth at the bottom of the shelves to make sure we can recess some lighting in to uplight everything. All of these little details, how this bar front's going to work, where the lighting sits tucked in under everything, how we protect, the bottom of the stone. Do we put a kicker in? Looking through all of that information, the elevation of the wine cellar that sits next door. And then we go through and do the same thing for the kitchen. I wonder if AutoCAD is not happy with me today. Let's see. I don't know why it's not opening up. It's really strange because it's showing. There it is. So here is my plan file for Alegre, and yes, it is a disaster. There are multiples of drawings in here where I was doing different exploding things up, like Bromic heater plans, looking at different options for heaters. But this is how I learnt to, sorry about the dogs having a bark in the background. This is how I learnt and used AutoCAD in the companies that I used it in. So we'd have individual plans for everything. I did something, I figured out that, blocks can be really helpful here. Not everybody in the office worked in blocks in this way, but make the block reference. And then when you copy the plan over, that block reference is the same. So if you update one, you don't have to update, 3 other instances of it, because it's all going to update again. And what that also helps you do is see the other information on the plans that need to be updated. So here I've got all of the different overall plans and things, electrical plans, hydraulic plans, all individual symbols and bits and pieces like that. So that is how the workflow in AutoCAD works. You've got individual instances of all of these things. When I get in to do a case study of some of the projects that I now do in SketchUp, you'll be able to see just how that kind of differs between multiple instances of a plan copied over and over and over versus a model-based viewport with information laid onto that. This is the overall elevations. So they're all, turned upside down so I could reference them from the correct viewpoint. With these, got them all laid out just like this, using that origin, spinning that origin round so I could turn it all and work on these different elevations that are all marked out and labeled as well, so I know where everything is. It's actually upside down, this file, at the moment. So that's interesting, but I won't fiddle with that now. But you can see, I've used sort of blocks and X-clip boundaries and things like that as well to try not to double handle too much of the work. I've got like the overall elevation that I've then down here, it's the full one that I've made into a block, and then I've used the X-clip to actually clip it into the smaller view. And you'll see again the difference between this methodology in AutoCAD versus what it's like in SketchUp when I do one of these for one of my later projects that I'm using. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on again. Here we've got the detailed area drawings for the kitchen. So again, all the same kind of thing: equipment notes, finishes codes, reference markers, lots of dimensions, hatches for different finishes, detailed notations for what everything is. Really gets into a lot of information with these, and then that all on flows through into a closer look at all of the elevations that relate just to the kitchen, the sections through what all the actual internal kitchen elevations look like to show all the equipment and stuff, and then into all the detail of, right, well, this is how the section through the counter is, where I want you to conceal lighting, how the different depths of things. I want this to be back this far. I want you to build out so it's like this. Whoops. Elevation of the kitchen, the kitchen counters and things. We've got the different the tile pattern as well, so that goes on the kitchen elevation. The screen detail, I love this. I was so impressed with myself with this when I came up with the idea. It sits above the kitchen pass openings. It's a really cute little addition. We went and got all custom made furniture, so I had to draw up all of the tables, all the different finishes, all the different sizes. Similarly, design intent drawings for some of the chairs that we wanted to create, the bench seat that we wanted to create. I did keep it quite simple because when we send it off to a factory, they've got experience. They know sort of these bits and pieces and how to construct this. We wanted literally like sort of just this made to our dimensions. So I gave them the dimensions and they did the rest. Now we get into sort of, and this is all getting into further details, some more individual sort of details, furniture, any other joinery in the space, for example, the ceiling panel details. So did a full plan set out of it, detail of what each panel looked like as well, and then how all the sort of fake beams in there worked. You can hang, of course you can hang solid beams, but what that doesn't allow you to consider is how you run lighting or recess lighting into it, running power, popping an LED into things, so there are some really clever ways you can make something look like a timber beam but give it really good functionality. So this is just some typical details of how that ceiling was going to work. Then we also had, a few bulkhead details, how I wanted things to come together. Unfortunately, I don't think this ended up happening, just with other services, air conditioning, ducting and that running through, but it's a really cool little idea. And then again, the timber structure. So we were using the same idea as the ceiling, so I was able to reuse those details to explain how this would be put together. I gave the dimensioning for all of this on a plan, and then same with the other side as well. We had custom timber doors going in on the private dining room, so I went through and did all that. We've got all the banquet seats as well, looking at how we wanted those to be detailed and dimensioned, all the different sizes of them, all labeled with a different BQO number. Got the scale on there to do plans, front elevations, and usually typical sections, which was back on here. So there's a typical section. I don't need to copy and paste that onto every single page because it's consistent across the entire design. Doors, again, we had more private dining room doors to do. The D105, yeah, more doors again, which are for all the bathrooms. And then here's the door detail reference plan, so you can see where every single one of these doors was intended to go. Then we have the side booth details. So we did a detailed plan showing the dimensions of that, what it looks like in elevation, and then sections through that, picked up how that's meant to actually look when it's cut through, how we wanted it to be built, where we wanted LEDs to be put in, all of that sort of thing. We had a feature fireplace going in, so this is the detail of that as well in plan section, sections both ways actually. And then another detailed area, but I always leave the bathrooms to the end of the package. It's just kind of the way I like to do it. Detailed plans of each side of bathrooms, different cubicle types, because I did have 2 different types. They weren't all going to be the same. And then you can see how that comes. So we've got them on both sides. The guys just had to work. I did a typical detail for each one, and the guys just had to work those finishes to the sizing on site and as judged by these. So, typical cubicle type 1 had these kind of elements to it. Here was the rough dimensions, but check each dimension cubicle against bathroom detail plans. Mock up the ceiling arches on site. We had beautiful curved arches. Here's the, typical elevations for cubicle type 01, fully detailed out, and then the same for cubicle type 02, which has this bench sort of wash plane kind of idea to it. Otherwise, very similar. It was really just those basin details that were different between them. So went ahead and did that. And that's the end of the drawing set, in terms of PDF at least. If we pop back over here, I wonder if this will open quickly enough. Probably should have done this before. The kitchen details. So again, you can see coming in here that this is, and the reason it's in all different DWG files, if you're familiar with AutoCAD, you know how big these files can get. So breaking them up, and we've got all the layouts down here as well. So you draw in paper, in model space, and then viewport through to paper space. But you can just see how many different instances it takes in AutoCAD to get all these drawings together. Whereas when you work in SketchUp, what I've discovered, and what I think works really, really well, is you use one instance, you use the model. That's it, that's all you use. It's one model in the model space. You take different cut sections and views through it, and then you add extra detail to those, just like we're doing here. We add it, but you're not having to redo or copy over, line work for elevations 2 or 3 times. So I do find it a much faster workflow, SketchUp to LayOut. But take my course, go check out some of the information on my Instagram if you're interested in seeing that, or sign up to my emails, because I'm sending out emails to you guys, very easy to read newsletter style things that just give you links to this information sent direct to your inbox. So as I do more of these sorts of case study videos, you'll be able to see and get a real idea of that workflow. So obviously with this, once that's all drawn up here, it's putting it on layouts and exporting it to the PDF we just looked at, which is over here. So that's really kind of it. This level of documentation is what helps to make your experience on site much smoother. And I've just realized what I haven't actually shown you guys are some of the schedules, and you can actually download my schedule template, which is even better than it was when I did these. You can download my schedule template and use exactly some of the dogs use exactly this for your own projects. You can see how much detail goes into these. I've seen other designers out there put together finishes schedules that have the picture, where it comes from, and like what it is, but it doesn't really tell you anything about how it's used, where it's going to be used, and just break down a little bit more of that information about the finish. Same with the lighting. You need to get into saying, well, what is the wattage and all this sort of stuff. And this is an older version of my schedules. You'll see if you look at my Instagram, my new version, it's got a line item for watts. So you can easily, when you've got to do a services review, you can see everything lined up perfectly there, ready to go. Bit more similarly to how this equipment legend works. So this doesn't even have, so you can see I was sort of creating that at the time, but lining all of these up so as you get the automated totals at the end, you can straight away see that how many watts this whole space is going to use on your lighting schedule. You can see as well what the pricing of some of these things. I've got all the pricing in here as well, which just helps per square meter, all of that, to track everything. I've got reference images for how I want, you know, the timber to actually end up looking. Very important with a lot of these bespoke design restaurants. I've got information about the leather, what, you know, thickness it is, all of that sort of thing. So really important to go through and include all of that information, as much as you can put into your schedules as well, to give that next level of detail. And there we have it, guys. Really, that's it. That's the whole set of Alegre. I hope you've enjoyed having a look through it. And if you're an interior designer or you're a business owner going ahead doing a fit out and you just need some kind of support like this, drop me a DM, pop down to the links in the description, because I'll include my email sign up. I'll include links to my detailed documentation course where I teach you all of this, everything you need to put into these drawings. I teach you that through the course. So yeah, sign up, check it out. Please, guys, like and subscribe to this channel. That will help keep this channel afloat. Show me your support that you like this kind of thing, and, you know, help keep building this resource for you guys. Anyway, have a great day. See you in the next one.